morning, everyone. Back with TRC. Well into the closing rounds of the TRC Posh British GT3 Championship. And Labe, as per usual, top of the timing boards. Very, very quick driver in the Aston Martin. We'll see if he carries that car over to another series here with TRC. And a few more drivers than we had last week at Barcelona. So looking to be a good night tonight in terms of turnout. Donington Park, a bit more of a unique course. Doesn't come up too often in many season rosters. Possibly some practice racing up ahead between the two Bentleys of Ewer and Wagner. Wagner ending up going ahead of Ewer. But Labe is lined up behind the both of them. I wonder if there was a bit of contact there between the two, and maybe we've got a server reset, or maybe that's just me. So we'll see if that was on the side of the server, or I believe that was server, so a little bit of technical difficulty. Bear with us for just a moment. And we come back in with a damp track, and we won't be getting any rain in that 30-minute time frame. But we do get some of the variable conditions that we're not necessarily expecting, but knew were on the table. We have a 10% chance of rain. It seems to be we caught a little bit of that 10% in practice, which means it is more than likely going to be dry in all of the qualifying sessions and all of the races. I don't know that we have really had any wet weather racing in this season. We did have the wet qualifying at Brands Hatch early on in the season. But Wagner out first to get the first laps in this practice session. In this newly updated practice session. Possibly that was just a server reset to get somebody else in on the driver list, and we should be good to go from now to the end. Going to be some good practice with greasy conditions, which are very much a possibility during the race. Don't know that the 25-minute sprints would be enough time to completely dry the track. It does depend on the underlying weather conditions therein, such as cloud cover and temperature, things of the like. Also time of day, a big factor in that as well. Some good practice. Bump the traction control up a couple ticks and continue to push. Wagner likely out here on slick tires, possibly on wets. Looking at a bit of the sliding, very possibly could be on wets, as the wet tires will start to warm up a lot, lose a lot of their effectiveness in these damp conditions, as they get very hot and they get slick like a marble. That's off On the side is the 23 of Fuzzy Vasconcelos. And 17 drivers on the grid for tonight. At least at the current moment. This is Wagner and Horner having a bit of a scrap between the two. Horner having to deal with some connection issues, but still going after the elusive win, and a bit of contact between the two Bentley drivers. Mansueto in the Jag was at the top of the order. No laps had been set. Horner now with the first and only valid lap so far. Also have the 913 of Craters with the 15 of Elizondo and the Aston Martin behind. It has definitely been an Aston Martin dominated season. I don't believe there has been a victory for the Jaguar, but it is definitely not off the table. We'll have to see what kind of pace the top Jag drivers are able to bring. But we have had Bentley victory, so it has not been an all Aston Martin song and dance the entire season. So we do have the chance of a Jaguar win. Only a couple rounds and a couple races left to go before and a big slide up turn 4. But a couple more opportunities for the Jags to bring home a win before it may be too late. Horner still the fastest, and a couple cars off track. I believe that's the 84 and the 111. The 111 of Karim in the wet grass trying to get that car turned back around the right way. 185 of Mansueto off as well. .616 of Veldkamp ahead of who was the practice leader of Horner, Labbe. I believe, unsurprisingly, taking the lead back in practice, at least time-wise. It will likely be a shootout between Labbe, Elizondo, and Horner. You could also throw Wagner in that mix as well if he can put together a good lap. Very quick in the Bentley, one of the quickest Bentley drivers that we have out on track. Still throughout the season and possibly going for the double championship, the Holy Grail championship, as it is his rookie season, as well as the overall championship. Being his first season, we'll definitely be looking at a promotion up to silver or gold. I don't know if it would be an immediate promotion up to platinum with the championship win, but it is probably not entirely off the cards either. Down through the curves goes Labbe, about halfway through this practice session. And a quick reminder to those of you either watching right now or tuned in later, I am going to be commentating the Aztec Racing ATR 24 Hours of Spa this weekend. So I hope to see a few of you there. I will be doing the full 24-hour stint as I did with the Aztec Racing 24 Hours of the Nordschleife last year, as I will be doing 24 Hours of the Nordschleife this year as well. But I like to do the full stint in these events. Just a genuine love of endurance racing in and of itself. And being the voice of an endurance race, especially as you get into the meat and potatoes of the race, about 6, 7, 8 hours in, everything seems to calm down, or at least should calm down for the most part, as the lap churning starts to begin. Labe goes a lot faster. 31.277 now the time to beat, almost a second clear of Horner in P2, well over a second clear of Elizondo in P3. Krim in the Aston with an exit at the end of the S's, the old hairpin turn 4. Just about 5 minutes left in free practice before we get started with Q1. This is going to be a sprint weekend, so we will have 2 qualifying sessions and 2 races. Qualifying 1 immediately followed by race 1, and then followed by Q2, and then followed by race 2. What will also transpire is the podium in race 1 will have a one-shot qualifier for Q2. So any driver that gets on the podium in race 1, now say if Labe does put it on pole but gets involved in an incident, is unable to get back onto the podium, he would have the full reign of the entire qualifying session to go for another lap. But say Labe puts together a good lap in Q1, puts it on pole, as Mansueto within half a second of Labe in the Jag. There is the possibility of Donington being the track for the Jag, especially as the track is starting to dry up. Track's still declared greasy. It will be a bit slick. Elizondo finds a bit more time. Horner finds a bit more time. Now 3 drivers within a second of Labe as we start to close down practice. Should Labe put it on pole, bring home the win in race 1, he'll have 1 opportunity for a flying lap in Q2. And Labe, as good of a driver as he is, has had some issues, maybe just trying to push a bit too hard to ensure himself that he gets onto the top spot, that he oversteps the bounds just a little too far and ends up invalidating the lap, sending him to the back of the pack. Doesn't matter now, though, as the track continues to develop, he continues to find more time. Labe now first driver into the sub-30s, and now almost 2 seconds clear of the rest of the field. But as the track continues to develop, so do the drivers who are trying to challenge Labe the most. Horner on his final flying lap, 1.1 seconds behind the time set by Labe. Craters in the Jag looking for a bit of a better weekend. So I don't think Craters has had quite the results this season that he may have been looking for. 84 of Brown in the Jag, off just ahead of Craters. As Craters goes a bit too narrow on the first of the two left-hand kinks. Does manage to hold on to it nicely. And we'll go past the 84 of Brown. Wagner in the Bentley finding some more time. He'll have a couple more opportunities should he choose to take them for a faster lap. And I can tell you after that incident with the curb, this will not be one of those fastest laps. And Labe finds a bit more time as well, but decides to park it and will return to the pit lane. Horner up the old hairpin, does not have enough grip to stay on the road, does keep it in good shape, does not lose the rear and go on around as I kind of expected him to, but maybe the big Bentley, like a boat, you send it the right way and it will set itself straight. 23 of Fuzzy Vasconcelos. Off at the right-hander just before the short straight into the very tight S's chicane will be a hot spot for contention. As you go side by side on the brakes, it is not easy to get the car slowed down for that very, very tight chicane, or if you are lined up side by side with someone, it's a fight of bravery because someone has to give up first. You don't really fit two cars side by side through the S's chicane. And another section of the track, that Sector 3 section, which will actually go ahead and hop on board with the 59 of Jennings, just coming out of the first of the two hairpins, the Melbourne hairpin before the Goddard's hairpin. This is a spot where you can set up a nice switcheroo move, have the inside for Melbourne, which would then put you on the outside at Goddard's, or maybe you go around the outside at Melbourne, and that would give you the inside at Goddard's. Big fight for traction and the like in that section of the track. Krim still putting in a little bit more practice. Coming out of McLean's, and then out of Coppice. Now running it down that straight. Horner, I think, trying to find some more time, as Wagner is the only driver within a second of Labe. We'll see if Horner continues to go on with this lap all the way to the end. We'll see if it's any quicker. Maybe a slight ray of hope for the Bentley driver at contending with the Aston Martin of Labe. No runs into the back of Karim, nowhere to really go. And Horner will bring it into the pit lane. Bird in the 64, I believe, making a first-time entry to this series. Not a first time with TRC, of course, but a first time with this Posh British GT3 series. Hopefully looking for a good result. A young driver with a lot of talent. '23 of Fuzzy Vasconcelos was going for another lap, but that is going to bring an end to free practice. Who is going out first? I hear a Jag, but I couldn't tell exactly which one. And that is going to be the Jag of Jennings out first. And the track is nice and dry, nice and warm. Optimum track. Well, it may not necessarily be warm, as I believe we are in the early morning hours. But the track is nice and dry, and it's got some rubber on it. Jennings a bit overzealous trying to warm the tires, as it is a very advanced tire warming strategy. Wonder if it will work for him. Still with that advanced tire warming strategy, trying to get those tires nice and hot. And I can assure you that they're hot, probably not in the spots that he exactly wanted them to be. The The 84 of Brown immediately behind in the Jag as well, followed by the 915 of Horner in the Bentley. Jennings still trying to find some temperature in those tires to really get a good drive through the corners. Kind of chucking it into the hairpin. I don't think that's quite the fastest line and definitely not good for tire life, but it is sprints. Maybe you don't worry about tire life and just chuck it on through the chicane as fast as you can. Jennings will be the first to put a lap together. No, is not going to. We'll just drive it straight into the wall. Again, bit of an awkward strategy, but more power to him. So Brown will be the first to set a flying lap in this qualifying session as long as this lap is valid. Does have the 915 Bentley of Horner, who was one of the podium contenders. Front row contender for sure in the Bentley. I do believe that Horner is starting to catch the Jaguar driver fairly quickly. I wonder exactly what kind of pace Horner may have in the Bentley with these dry track conditions. It's not necessarily going to help his lap time, but I think Brown may have just moved over at the exact right time to allow Horner to go on through, and we'll continue to bring our first flying lap of this qualifying session. Times possibly well into the 128s. Possibly even the 127s. We were still on greasy conditions at the end of the previous free practice session. Now we have dry optimum conditions. And while the tires are probably not up to their peak operating temperatures, or at least exactly where Horner wants them, they will be close enough to give us a relative scale on the lap times that we should expect to see. 129.085 for Horner. Brown goes about 9 seconds slower, what would be a 138. Mansueto goes second fastest. A little over half a second. You were 2.5 seconds slower. Labe almost into the 27s, a second clear, almost a second clear of Horner. Labe still the one to beat Horner in second. We'll see if this lap time improves. The tires will have a little bit more temperature in them, so there's a good opportunity of maybe finding some more time. But again, it is going to be quite the challenge to, well, challenge the Aston Martin of Labe. One driver who has a good shot in doing so would be the 15 of Elizondo, first flying lap, 3.4 seconds off of Labe. Labe finds some more time well into the 27s now, 27.882. Labe absolutely flying in qualifying. Does not have the fastest Sector 1. That honor would go to Horner. Does have the fastest Sector 2 and Sector 3. Fastest Sector 3 by a large margin. Same thing with Sector 2. Horner has it done in Sector 1, at least for the time being. But Still a long way to go for anyone to put up a contentious time to the 27.882 of Labe. Labe in a bit of traffic though. Bahena currently P11. Fuzzy Vasconcelos in the Bentley has actually had an incursion with the wall, will return to the pit lane. Elizondo in the number 15 Aston Martin, what is it looking like for him across the line? And it is on a pole, 75 thousandths of a second faster than Labe. Now maybe Labe not looking so comfortable. Elizondo pushing for everything that he has got. Does Labe have any more to contend with? Or has Elizondo pulled the golden lap? Still plenty of time left, about 2 more laps for each of these two drivers. But for Elizondo, it's not purple across the board. It is an absolutely flying Sector 1. But Labe faster, sorry, not faster. Yes, Labe faster in Sector 2. And Elizondo faster in Sector 3. So there's still more time to be found. We'll see if these drivers can find it. Heading into the Goddard's hairpin for Horner. Will there be any improvement on the lap? Not this time. He does have one more opportunity. Will have 2 opportunities, actually. So if this one invalidates or is not that fast, he will get another opportunity. Elizondo did not improve. Labe coming into the final hairpin. Will Labe find any improvement? He doesn't need much. And Elizondo proving that the time is there to be found. It won't happen on this lap, so just barely 2 more opportunities for Labe. And just about everyone has qualified except for the number 99 Bentley of Wagner. Yet to qualify, and at this rate will not qualify. But I think Wagner has decided that he wants to go ahead and give it a run from the back. We'll see how many positions he can make. Previous round at Barcelona, he was able to make quite a few positions. We are heading into the closing stages of qualifying. The 47 of Miller crossing the line, currently P11. Stays P11, but did improve. Has one more opportunity. The 915 of Horner has this opportunity and one more. Found about half a second. It's not going to be enough for Horner. And he's not going to try for another. Gave it his all. Elizondo finds a couple more tenths, and now it is a lot harder for Labe. But Labe again will have this opportunity and one more to try to improve. Elizondo is done, and it's not going to be enough. Labe finds another half a second and bests the time of Elizondo by almost 0.2 of a second. Just about everyone has returned to the pit lane. Brown in the 84 Jag. A bit wide into the final hairpin. And will enter into the pit lane. What about for the 64 Jag of Bird? Traction control putting in work, and across the line will be P8. Labe is staying out. Likes the track all to himself and wants to maybe find a bit more time in the car as a bit of an intimidation tactic. Into the S chicane and invalidates right there. Just tried to find a bit too much. Once again, it is Labe on pole. Lab A, P1, Elizondo, P2, another Aston Martin front row, Horner, P3, Jennings, P4, Mansueto, P5, Merkel, P6, Veldkamp, P7, Bird, P8, Craters, P9, Daharo, P10, Miller, P11, Ewer, P12, Fuzzy Vasconcelos, P13, Bahena, P14, Karim, P15, Brown, P16, Wagner, P17. And a wet track to start. Real quick for our Holy Grail drivers. Lab A on pole, Mansueto P2, Veldkamp P3, Daharo P4, Ewer P5, Fuzzy Vasconcelos P6, Bahena P7, Karim P8, and Brown P9. It's once again Lab A on pole and a wet track to start. On the formation lap, they will try to displace as much of that water as they can. But it is going to be a bit of a spicy start, maybe a change of strategy. Do you go out and start the race on wets? Do you put slicks on and just hope that the track dries quickly? The sun does seem to be poking out, so the track drying may have started a little bit. But it is going to be a bit of a gamble. Coming into the pit lane is likely not going to be the correct choice, and with no more rain coming, you might think, well, I'll just go out there on slicks, maybe put the setup on a little bit safer in terms of camber and tire pressures. Slick tires are going to be extremely cold with the wet conditions, but as long as you manage them and the track starts to dry, you'll be in the better position later on in the race. And once again, thank you all for tuning in. A couple more rounds left in this TRC Posh British GT3 Championship, but I believe it is Lab A who is going to be the favorite heading into the closing rounds. I do believe we have 2 more rounds. We have this week sprints at Donington, and then next week sprints at Snetterton. And then on March 5th, we will have I believe it is an hour and 20-minute endurance race at Brands Hatch, where this season started. But the engines will be fired. We'll get started with the formation lap. And Lab A will lead the field one more time for race number 1. Again, for Q2, Lab A, should he win, should Elizondo finish on podium, should Horner finish on podium, they will all have just one opportunity for a flying lap in Q2. Lab A does seem to be a bit of a V12 whisperer. And Granado, since you're in chat, if you just want to make sure that I sound fine on the mic. And there is the spray. But the sun is out at the same time, and if Lab A makes this a bit of a slower formation lap, he may give the field more time to dry the track. But as of right now, it is bright and sunny with the mist and spray from the wet track conditions. And it'll take a minute for, you can't really call it the wet line to improve, or the wet line to show, or the dry line to show, is, well, the ACC lines, it's the wet line is just the dry line with the water removed, even though it would technically be a little bit backwards in real life. You'd want to be off of that slick rubber and oil and such that would be laid down on the racing surface, on the racing line. You'd kind of step out of the racing line a bit, but it's all semantics. The drivers will use the best part of the track to their advantage should it begin to form. There's going to be a lot of work on this formation lap to build track, or to build tire temperature, possibly to build track temperature to dry this track as fast as possible. Disperse that water as much as possible. And Also get those brakes nice and warm. Water does come up into the brake ducts, into the wheel wells, and cools those brakes. So if you were to go with a wet setup, you would close the brake ducts a little bit to retain more temperature in those brakes so they don't lose their temperature as quickly. Lab 8 goes ahead and removes the hay bales at the chicane. They wouldn't survive lap 1, so probably better to just go ahead and move them now. And the field now gets set up 2 by 2 as we get started with race number 1. The race leader, pole sitter of Lab 8, spins it around. He's got to get back up to the front of the grid to not incur a starting penalty. And a very, very early, very rare mistake for the pole sitter. I think he should be able to get back to the front of the grid in time. Might just barely be able to get back to the front of the grid in time. It will be close, but I think he does make it. We'll see if he gets a starting penalty as we await the green flag. And green, 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 no penalty for Lab 8, but he's got a Bentley all over his rear. And Horner, desperately trying to find traction, does eventually find it. I didn't know a car as heavy as that Boatley would be able to lose traction. Would nearly expect it to sink down through the tarmac. But big moments behind, maybe. I think everyone just kind of slowed down. Karim off into the grass, going for a bit of an adventure. Same thing with the 59 Jag of Jennings. But it's Elizondo at the front, as Lab 8 had a bit of an adventure himself. And at the old hairpin, they're all stacked up. Nowhere to really go. Miller with the Bentley has a bit of damage on the front. Karim makes hard contact with the inside wall. These varying conditions making things a bit harder. I think everyone decided to go out on slicks, and there is not much grip on cold slicks in wet conditions. You've got to have a bit of skill to wrestle that car home. But as of right now, it is Horner in the lead. Elizondo was leading, but ended up making a mistake, and I think that Bentley just weighs so much that, well, they just cut right on through the water. It's like driving a big truck through the mud. They can just weigh themselves down to the bottom and find the traction. Lab 8 has made his way back up to P5. I believe it's Mansueto that fell down to P6, but it's going to be, I would say that it's going to be Horner leading at the end of lap 1, but it may very well be Wagner. A drag race between the two Bentleys, and it's Wagner who is leading leading lap number 1 in race number 1. As they come into turn number 1, Wagner possibly went on to the alternate strategy. He does seem to have a lot more grip than the rest of the field. Is he on the wet tire? Maybe not expecting the track to dry that quickly, as he has pulled a massive gap. Elizondo also starting to fall behind. Merkel gets a poor run through the old hairpin. Turn 4 through 5 and 6. Lab 8 trying to find the traction, trying to find the drive, trying to find the space to get past Merkel. But it has not been afforded as of yet. Maybe into Coppice. Lab 8 able to get the move done, but no, has to check up, and Mansueto is now applying pressure behind. Horner possibly made a mistake and a bit squirmy on the brakes heading into the S's hairpin. Elizondo gets a much better run and will go on through. Merkel goes straight on at the S's chicane. Who else went straight on? It's the 64 of Bird. Chaos abundant all over the track as we have one of those Airbus planes going into the airport nearby the track. 47 of Miller going for an expedition into the English countryside, but it's Wagner all by himself, not making any mistakes, and has essentially had the race lead handed to him as we are a fifth of the way nearly a fifth of the way through this race. Horner down to P3, Labe P4, Elizondo P2. But again, mistakes definitely seem to be the driving factor in this race number 1. Mansueto almost lost it, still trying to get some temperature in those tires, really trying to find the grip. And losing the traction, losing the front end, just understeering off the track. That will allow Merkel and the Aston Martin to take that 5th position back. Veldkamp from 7th may be able to get 6th place away, but I don't think so. Horner a second back from Elizondo. Labe a second back from Horner, but it is Wagner all on his own at the front of the field. Has gone past Brown, who just went a bit late on the brakes into the Melbourne hairpin. This group here of our heavy hitters in this league, as I believe we may have just lost Horner in that fight. Horner has been fighting with some disconnection issues. So we did lose Horner. Labe promoted to P3. But now we have a fight between the 2 Aston Martin big dogs of Elizondo and Labe. Here the 43 of DeHaro, I believe that was the 47 of Miller. Horner has rejoined the race, but he is going to be down on track position by quite a large margin. And wet and rainy chaos here at Donington. The 84 of Brown up ahead, trying to get that Jag spun back around. Kept it out of the track, both Elizondo and Labe. A bit of opposite lock counter steer, trying to keep those Aston Martins pointed the right direction. Do a great job of keeping control, but it's just kind of a testament to the conditions that they are racing on. Doing the same thing through Compass. Very, very easy on the throttle. Don't want to get the RPMs too high up too early, as you will just lose all of your momentum at corner exit. 289 of Ewer had a bit of an off. I believe that is the 64 of Bird that has actually lost a position there, down to P10. Fuzzy Vasconcelos and Bahena, one behind the other, but this battle for P2 continues. Labe inching ever so much closer to Elizondo. This is the newcomer who has shown a ton of talent versus the seasoned veteran here with TRC. And is Labe on wet tires? Do see Labe using a bit more of the wet sections of the track than Elizondo. Could have just been how you look going down the straight. But if someone is on wet tires early, as the track starts to dry, would make track conditions, would make the track surface a lot warmer, would make those tires very warm. So if you're on wet tires trying to make them last, you'll find those puddles of water and try to cool those tires off the best you can. Let's go ahead on board with Labe and just watch the steering wheel movement. You can see all of the counter steer trying to keep the steering wheel pointed straight. That spray, while it is sunlight, no clouds inside, the track is still wet. And a bit deep into the chicane, that's going to open up the gap to Elizondo. So we'll get out of the onboard cam and leave Labe to his own devices. Elizondo, both Elizondo and Labe, as Elizondo makes a counter mistake, brings Labe right back into the fold. Just a bit too early on the power into the hairpin. and Wagner. What tires has he gone on as we are a third of the way through this race, approaching halfway? What tires did Wagner go with, or did he just get lucky getting out in front and clean to where he's just been able to pull away from the rest of the field? Labe and Elizondo continuing their fight for P2. And while I thought this was going to be the fight for P1 between the two of them, it has been anything but. They've managed to scrounge together the positions and the speed to get back up and at least be contending for the podium. But as of right now, there is no one who is going to be contending with Wagner for the race win, should everything go the right way for Wagner. Merkel and Horner having a bit of a scrap between the two. Horner down on laps after that disconnection. And I believe the 59 of Jennings going past Bird. Labe and Elizondo just continuing to lap one ahead of the other. Be very interesting to talk to the drivers post-race, or likely after race 2, as they won't want to spoil any sort of race strategy should we get similar conditions in race 2. It would be very interesting to see what tires they're on. They're going all the way out into the water. Is it just for the better run into turn 1, or are they trying to get some of that moisture on those tires? Are wet tires allowing them to go that far outside on the racing line? These two are catching not the 913, the 915 of Horner, who is also behind the 23 of Fuzzy Vasconcelos. But again, very close running between the two. Same thing with DeHaro and Mansueto. This is the fight for P5. Sorry, DeHaro and Veldkamp. Back on with Elizondo and Labe. Keep an eye on that battle between DeHaro and Veldkamp. Did Miller go out on wets and is coming in to put slicks on? Labe once again gets it wrong at the chicane. And that gap to Elizondo will open up once again. Does Elizondo make a mistake this time? No, he does not. Very easy on the throttle. And will now try to stretch this gap ahead of the sister Aston of Labe. DeHaro has opened the gap to the Aston Martin behind, as DeHaro possibly looking to move forward. I don't know if he's got enough time to catch the 185 Jag of Mansueto. That would come down to whether or not Mansueto makes a mistake at the same time, as you hear him crunch the foam of that barrier. Miller in the pit lane, I believe repairing damage and possibly putting dry tires on. I'm very surprised that the track has stayed wet for this duration, especially with the sun being out. I would expect this track to transition to dry, or not dry, but damp fairly quickly. That does not seem to be the case. Is this a three-way fight for position? Is that Jennings getting the double on DeHaro and Veldkamp? Yes, it is. Jennings driving the wheels off of that Jaguar, pulls past the both of them and flies away off into the distance. Jennings up to P5. The gap between Elizondo and Labe has grown, but again, we have seen Elizondo make mistakes, but sadly we have seen Labe make more. Otherwise, we would have a good battle on our hands between the two. And Veldkamp in P7 being lapped by the 99 of Wagner. The 84 Brown off and pirouetting in the grass, trying to get that car rejoined onto the racing surface. Two Aston Martins battling of Bahena and Merkel. Merkel gets a bit too much of the grass on the inside. Thought it was going to unsettle the front and wash him out into McLean's, but no, it did not. Manage to get it on the brakes and keep the car on the gray hard tarmac. Stay behind Bahena, possibly to contend for the position. Labe making some mistakes as Elizondo will continue to pull away. Mansueto a ways back, so Labe still in a good position for points. I don't believe that Labe is necessarily under attack in terms of the championship, but I'll go ahead and take a look at the points right now. Battle between Bahena and Merkel continues. Bahena a bit deep into the old hairpin. Will Merkel put it alongside? Keeps it out of the grass, keeps it off the curb. That painted curbing, very, very slick when the track is wet, and Merkel very brave to go 4 tires on it, but no, it goes wrong, and just as I said, just as it looked like he had gotten control of it, the control of the car just slips out from under him, and Bahena will ride off into the sunset, now contending with the 64 of Bird for P8. We'll go back on that battle between Bird and Bahena. Bahena has got it up the inside. Tried to get on the power in that puddle. Kicked the rear end of the car around, but did still manage to hold on to the position. And will now try to pull away from the Jag of Bird. Miller, who came into the pit lane, has Bentley of Wagner now behind us. Wagner still seemingly no mistakes. And is Wagner on wet tires? And did he just pull the best strategy by far if he is on those wet tires? Side by side in the braking zone for Goddard's. Wagner continues on ahead. Elizondo, all on his own, has the 913 Jag of Craters up ahead. I believe just about everyone, especially with the challenging track conditions, has kind of just slotted themselves into their best running position, where they may stay for the time being. In the championship standings, drop races accounted for, as Elizondo will go around the outside of Craters. what has happened here? Has Jennings gone past Mansueto? Yes, he has. And Jennings up to P4 again, hard charging in the Jag. I don't think he has enough time to catch up to the 119 Aston of Lave. But Jennings on an absolutely great run. Bahena was going to try to go past. I think actually has gone past, and Bird involved with an incident with the 84 Jag of Brown. That was, I believe, some Jag friendly fire. And sort of behind the 47 Bentley of Miller. 913 of Craters around at McLean's. Finds the opening, it gets that car turned back around. But it is looking to be another Bentley victory for Wagner. It has, I believe, been a while since he had one. But will score good points in race 1. Should he finish in this position, I don't think he's necessarily under any sort of attack right now. May just be driving about 75–80% to bring this race home for race 1. Again, he will be one of those drivers on the one-shot qualifier in Q2, which may make things a bit interesting. Merkel in the Aston, I believe, has gone past Bird, and Merkel, we saw earlier, get onto the curb at McLean's, or at the exit of McLean's, and did not fare too well when it came to putting the traction down. Ended up spinning off exit stage left into the wall. That's where that damage came from, but has recovered a couple positions since then. But as of right now, the 119 of Lave, with race 2 still to go tonight. And the next round at Snetterton, followed by the final round at Brands Hatch, is in a very good position to bring home the championships in both the Holy Grail and the overall championship. For those who may not know, the Holy Grail is a rookie championship for first-time drivers, first time to enter a season. You get entered into the Holy Grail for that season, and based on your performance, you will either promote out of the Holy Grail, or if you win the championship, it also counts as a second championship for just the rookie drivers. Jose Vasconcelos with the 47 of Miller behind. It's actually, no, the 47 of Miller has gone ahead. I was a bit late with the timing board there. And it seems to be that the track is just going to stay wet the entire race. It has not rained at all. The track was wet when the session started, but not warm enough, and I guess not enough sunlight to dry the track. There has been some water dispersed, but not enough to make it a truly dry or damp track. I sincerely expected us to transition to damp. I knew we probably wouldn't dry in the time frame, especially with the amount of cars we have on track, but did not expect to stay wet the whole time. Merkel with Veldkamp behind. I believe Merkel may have just gone past Veldkamp, as Merkel seemingly carrying a lot of speed. The 99 of Horner, sorry, not Horner, the 99 of Wagner. The other Bentley was the 915 of Horner, who is running at the back of the pack after that disconnection, which put him laps down. But Wagner will bring us around one more time for the final lap of this race. As it will be 1 to go when he crosses the line. Is this a battle for position here? I believe it is. And Ewer later on the brakes gets P12 away from Fuzzy Vasconcelos. There is rain on the forecast, but that rain will not hit the track. The session will end before then, and Fuzzy goes around on his own. And I believe the 913 of Craters, as you hear those straight cut gears kind of limping their way around the hairpin, just kind of shows you how off the throttle those drivers are. And Wagner has lapped the field. I believe Wagner has been on wets, and I think was one of the only drivers out there on wets, just based on his pace alone. But has lapped the field all the way up to 3rd place, all the way up to, well, the current season championship leader and Holy Grail leader of Lab A. If that is not a dominant showing for Wagner, I don't know what is. He may have to lap the 15 of Elizondo. You can see him just exiting the Melbourne hairpin up ahead. So it wasn't entirely out of the picture for Wagner. But in an absolutely dominant showing in race 1, Wagner will take home the win for Bentley and be one of those drivers on the one-shot qualifier for Q2. Elizondo still with a long way to go. Labe's race will be done. Jennings' race will be done. Bird's race will be done. And Wagner with some early donuts. Elizondo still to finish. And now in just a position to bring it home in one piece. Have Veldkamp and Brown bringing their cars home as well. 43 of Daharo crosses the line P7. Merkel will cross the line P8. 15 of Elizondo will cross P2. But it is all Wagner today. Labe still took the win in the Holy Grail. So there's still some good points for him there, at least in the Rookies Championship, but still made it onto the podium overall and will remain one of those drivers who is left for the one-shot qualifier in Q2. And Brown will be the last of our drivers across the line to end race number 1. It is all about Wagner in race 1. I don't know his exact strategy. I would be willing to guess that he was out there on the wet tires just based on his quicker pace compared to the rest of the field, but I believe the only way to find out will be to ask him later, as he is likely not wanting to spoil the strategy of victory. And we shall see if he can do the double and repeat in race 2. We just wait for the transition period between race 1 and Q2. And we will get started with the second qualifying session. And again, thank you all for tuning in. If you're either watching live or tuning in post-race watching on Twitch or YouTube. Thank you. If you are not following, I'd greatly appreciate it if you'd hit that follow button. And if you're on YouTube or do not know of the YouTube channel, I'd greatly appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And go ahead and like the YouTube VOD as well if you're watching post-stream or if you're watching live on YouTube. And don't forget, I will be live this weekend, February 22nd, for the Aztec Racing Spa 24 Hours. TRC will be competing with a Bentley team in that race. So if you'd like to support TRC or any of the various leagues that you may be affiliated with, the majority of them do have entries in the ATR Spa 24 Hour as part of their Season 2 Endurance Cup. And now we transition to Q2, and this is likely going to be a condition of get out and go. I don't know if you may have seen it in the top corner, but there is rain at the end of this qualifying session. And if you are one of those one-shot qualifiers, you are going to want to go now rather than later. Waiting till the end will put you in that weather. Who knows when the rain starts? It's just going to end sometime in less than 10 minutes. And we can only see 10 minutes in the future, so it's possible that it rains in 2 minutes, rains in 3 minutes, might rain in 5 minutes. We don't know, we just know that it will be raining at the end of the session. Do you risk it? Let the track develop a couple laps before you go out. The track is damp and likely will transition to greasy before the rain starts. Practice was damp, not wet, and ended up being greasy. Qualifying 1 was completely dry, optimum conditions, and Horner likely going back into the pit lane for a tire swap. And Labe wants to go out for the one-shot qualifier early. Just wants to go ahead and get it done. I think he may have seen that blip of rain early on, or may have been listening to the stream for the forecast. But it is going to rain at the end of the session. Labe needs to make sure that this lap is good. This is just the out lap, so this is not the lap I'm referring to, but this lap needs to be good. It has to be absolutely perfect. He will hope that there is no traffic up ahead, but again, it is a one-shot qualifier. And a bit deep into Goddard's, but he will bring it back around. And I don't think has anyone exiting the pit lane just ahead. It's perfect conditions for the 119 championship leader of Labe. Nice and tidy through turn 1. Coming into 2 and 3, the S's has the 97 of Merkel up ahead. I can guarantee you Labe saying, stay off, stay off, stay off. I'm coming through on this lap. Up through the double left-handers for the hard braking zone into McLean. Again, this lap has to be perfect from Labe. It wants to get out early and get it done. Wagner possibly going to stay in the pit lane. He did from last to first in race 1. And likely wants the challenge for race 2. But maybe Wagner takes a look at the points and says, oh, maybe I've got a chance at the championship here. Labe with a bit of a slide through the S's chicane. 2 more corners to go, and this is all that Labe will have. This is his only opportunity at a flying lap. So whatever this lap is at the end of the line, regardless of whether it is valid or not, is going to be the end of Labe's qualifying session, as slick tires just go optimum. If Labe waited just a little bit longer, may have been able to run a better lap. That was the gamble that he took, especially with varying conditions and no idea when that rain is going to come. Now slick tires, optimum bird. Second driver to input a lap. 1.7 seconds off the pace of Labe. For the time being, Labe steadfast in his lead. And the first of the drivers to go out and set the lap. Wonder if Elizondo is maybe waiting a bit too long. Across the line for Fuzzy, it is third. We'll continue to try and find some more time. I believe Miller will be the next across the line. We'll see if his lap is valid. It is not. What about Craters? Good enough for P2. Labe still on top. The 18 of Bahena in the Aston Martin stays P17. The lap is invalid. What about the 915 of Horner? The 97 of Merkel possibly got pushed off the track there. Invalid for Horner, invalid for Merkel. But for Bird, it's good enough for pole, so Labe will not start on the top spot. And when does that rain come? It is very possible that it's just a shower at the end. But there will be rain, and possibly it was just a glitch that I saw. It may not have been in forecast at all, but I did see a blip of rain at the 10-minute mark. So we'll see if we get a quick shower at the end of qualifying or if it stays dry. And it may be just been my imagination. .43 of Daharo across the line goes P6. A 289 of Ewer goes P7. The 47 of Miller, is this lap valid? Across the line, what will it be? Miller invalid. Mansueto goes fastest. 913 of Craters P5. What about Bahena? Steals that P5 away by just about a second. 915 of Horner across the line, still invalid. What about the 97 of Merkel? Across the line goes P7. 616 of Velkamp, 4.7 seconds off the pace. Does he find any more time? Finds that 0.7 seconds, but still needs 4 seconds. 23 of Fuzzy Vasconcelos side by side with the 84 Jag of Brown. Fuzzy P10, Brown P12. Bird and the Jag just needs a 10th, and as of right now, Mansueto and Bird both on pole. I believe this would be the first pole position for the Jags. Now they do need to contend with the pace of Labe, the pace of Wagner, and the pace of Elizondo. But with the way things are lining up, it's very possible for both of these Jag drivers, Mansueto and Bird, to be on the top spot at the end of Q2. Everyone coming across the line will get at least one more opportunity. Those who have just now come across the line will get 2. Mansueto back on top. Craters finds the top spot. It's a Jag. 1, 2, 3. What about Bahena? Goes P4. Labe down to P5. Maybe Labe was listening to the stream when I called that forecast. I may have called it a bit early. I did see rain on the forecast, but could have just been left over from the previous session and took a minute to update. Merkel, P7. What about for the 23 of Fuzzy? Across the line goes P9. The 99 of Horner on his one and only flying lap. Is it going to be enough for pole for the Bentley? Only one way to find out, and he'll have one more opportunity. Actually, no, he will not, as this is his one-shot qualifier for winning race 1. I think that was just the outlap. This is the one-shot qualifier. Bird goes back on top of 31.627 as the track is improving. Craters in the pit lane will not improve. DeHaro has one more opportunity. Mansueto will not improve. What about the 84 of Brown? 9.6 seconds off the pace. Does not find any more time there. The Bentley of Miller goes 5th fastest, as Labbe is now well into the pack, down to P7. Right on board with the 99 of Wagner. This is his one and only opportunity for a qualifying lap. Elizondo out as well on his one and only opportunity. I think Labbe may have seen that blip of rain on the forecast as I did, but maybe it was just a little bit of a glitch there and there was no rain, because 10 minutes later it is not raining. Into Goddard's, the track is almost completely dry. It does not have any rubber on it, but the track is almost completely dry. For Wagner, what will it be across the line? It's good enough for pole by 0.8 of a second. So the Jags have been knocked off the top spot. Bird found a half a second more, but it was not enough. Jennings goes P3. DeHaro P4. Elizondo goes fastest in the Aston Martin. Denies pole position for the Jags, but it is an army of Jags behind the two front row sitters. And Brown 11.3 seconds to find. See how much of it he knocks out at the end of this lap. Got a couple seconds out of it. It is not Wagner, Elizondo this time. 29.949 with his one-shot qualifier on greasy conditions at the end of Q2. And it will be Elizondo, Wagner, Bird, Jennings, DeHaro, Craters, Mansueto, Miller, Bahena, Labbe down to P10 after going early on his one-shot qualifier. Merkel P11, Fuzzy P12, Ewer P13, Veldkamp P14, Brown P15, Horner P16. Well, the sun is shining, and we are ready to get rolling. Looking on from the dash of Horner. Looking off, I believe that is the sunset. I think we are later in the day. The track is once again going to stay wet. Does this change the strategy? Have they seen possibly what Wagner went with? Did he go on the wet tire the whole time? Is that going to be the case today in this race 2? Is that going to be the tire to go with? Was that even the tire that he was on in the first place? We did not see any track development aside from a little bit of water dispersion on the racing line, but we did not see any track development past those wet conditions. Did not get a transition into damp, did not get any sort of drying whatsoever. It's very possible that we see the exact same here in race 2. 25 minutes from here to the end as we look to close out round 5 of the TRC Posh British GT3 Championship. Once again, make sure you are here on Saturday morning I believe the race start, or possibly the qualifying start, will be 7 o'clock a.m. Central Time in the U.S. And I think race start will be 8 a.m. Green flag sometime around there. Again, if you would like to support the TRC Vision Racing Bentley, you can join the stream. Greatly appreciate having you guys there with me, especially to support your TRC companions. And anyone else who is either watching or contending in that event, good luck to all of you, and I will see you on Saturday. Engines fired, and Elizondo in the Aston Martin this time will lead the field to the line. We've done it once before, so maybe we do a little bit better this time. And don't let Wagner absolutely run away with it. And we've got a bit more experience with the strategy. Bird and the Jag had a disconnection. Will rejoin at the end of the field. I think is going to have to start in the pit lane. Could be a blessing, could be a curse. And possibly Elizondo having some connection issues as well, so we'll actually go on board with the Bentley of Wagner for the time being. Getting on the brakes very hard to try and build that brake temperature, tire temperature, and brake temperature, especially with these wet conditions. Very, very challenging to get much going on that formation lap. You have to really drag those brakes to try and warm them up. And especially once we get down to the end of the formation lap, we line up 2 by 2. You have to sit there going slowly, can't really drag the brakes very much. I mean, you may be able to before you have to assume the race pace speed, or the starting pace speed of 70 kilometers an hour. But you have to kind of just sit there lined up. You're not going to be able to do much weaving, or any weaving really. Try and warm those tires up. And when they get the 2 by 2 call, pretty much what tire temperature and brake temperature they have, they will have to deal with for the time being. As you can see, Jennings behind, once again with that aggressive tire temperature strategy. And it is just a sprint, so may not need to do too much in terms of tire preservation. We will see if that plays out for the duration of this race. They now get the call for 2 by 2. Elizondo will lead the field to the line. Wagner on the outside. Jennings in the Jag behind. DeHaro in the Jag behind. Craters in the Jag behind. Mansueto in the Jag behind. There's 2 rows of Jags before Bahena in the next Aston Martin and Miller in the next Bentley. As the Jaguar Army definitely decided to show out in Q2. And Labbe, the one to watch, down in now P9 after Bird starts in the pit lane, to possibly run through the field should he find the opening. Green, green, green. We are racing in race 2 of round 5 of the TRC Posh British GT3 Championship. Wagner and Elizondo nearly making contact, and we have had an exit early, and that is the 119 of Labbe, who is now going to be relegated to the back of the pack, just in front of the 64 of Bird, who had started in the pit lane. And it will now be Elizondo to defend against Wagner as they come up through left-handers. Merkel himself had an off and will now be relegated back to the end of the field. 23 of Fuzzy Vasconcelos as well. So both Bird and Labbe get a couple positions off of that, and Labbe has now caught up to the back of the main pack. But his two contenders, especially his main championship rival in Wagner, are out at the front. And Elizondo is continuing to pull away, but no, the track has transitioned into damp. And is this going to be the curveball that we expected in race 1, did not get? Are we going to get a transition into dry conditions here in race 2, and has that thrown the strategy completely on its head? We did not see damp conditions whatsoever in race 1, and we've already got damp conditions by the end of lap 1. Elizondo leads lap 1, Wagner P2, DeHaro in P3. In a drag race between the Jags of Jennings and Mansueto, Jennings will hold the inside, forces Mansueto onto the wet outside line. Bahena with Miller and Craters behind. And where is Labbe in this? He's made it through ahead of Brown, Veldkamp, and Bird. Bird has made it ahead of Veldkamp, so it is now Brown with now Horner, who wants to go around, but no. A spin from Brown and takes out the sister Jag of Bird, who is still sliding. We've got quite the large pack here behind the 59 of Jennings, Mansueto, Bahena, Miller, Craters, all the way back to Labbe. And Mansueto, 185 Jag, definitely wants to find an opportunity. Is he going to go later on the brakes into the S's chicane? No, he will not. Craters in the Jag concedes the position to Labbe. So Labbe will go on ahead, and who is that around? It's Mansueto, the 185. As Jennings will now pull away on his own. The 9, that's actually not the 913, that is the 47 of Miller with some damage on the front. Don't know if that incident and that damage was caused by Miller, as Miller gets a tap around. Gets corrected by Bahena, but then goes around ahead of Craters, brushes doors and makes front end head-to-head contact with the 616 of Veldkamp. That is going to be heavy damage for those two. Veldkamp will continue on. I think Miller trying to desperately get back on track. Ended up causing a larger incident, in which case he was just the victim catalyst of that whole event. Jennings and Labbe, don't know if there was any contact there, but I don't see any damage. Jennings off at the old hairpin. And now the 616 of Mansueto, sorry, the 616 of Veldkamp with the 185 of Mansueto attacking. 289 of Ewer also in the fold. So Labbe has gone up ahead, is in P4, now trying to chase down the number 3 Jag of DeHaro. And it's Elizondo and Wagner just continuing on their own, about a second between the two of them. 913 of Craters was being shown yellow flags. Those did eventually go away. Mansueto up the inside of Veldkamp. That damage, while it did seem to be pretty extensive as those two cars hit head-on, which does not happen very often, does seem to still be at least a drivable car for Veldkamp. Bird and Ewer side by side through Melbourne. Bird ends up slotting just ahead of Ewer. There has been some contact here in race 2. Some avoidable contact for sure. There may be some words exchanged post-race. Elizondo now starting to grow the margin just the slightest amount. Was 1 second the lap prior, now 1.1. As they come through the sector marker at the end of Sector 2, the gap has now grown 0.3 of a second since then. Bird and Veldkamp side by side. Bird took a bit of evasive action to not make contact with Veldkamp. Any contact between these two would have been and off, and look at that wrench in the works. 10 minutes, heavy rain. If you're out there on slicks, you stay on slicks. If you're out there on wets, you're doing just fine. If you maybe were hoping for the alternate strategy, the track to dry a little bit, your hopes have just been dashed. Are we going to see drivers come into the pit lane? There's not really much time for a pit stop. Craters, I think, possibly had an incident, is now back just ahead of Ewer and Veldkamp. Ewer up to P10, I believe. 913 of Craters back a good ways as well. And these two fighting Jennings and Mansueto for P6. Mansueto slots in ahead. Labe still trying to chase down DeHaro for P3. This is going to be the battle for the Holy Grail lead, but it's also the battle for the final spot on the podium, which Labe will desperately want. Wagner, with that race 1 win, has at least started to close the gap to Labe and contend for that overall championship win. I believe the Holy Grail championship should all but sealed away for Labe. Definitely wants to ensure that he will get all of the points available if he can get ahead of the 43 of DeHaro. Here with Veldkamp and Merkel, as they've all kind of swapped positions there. Merkel ahead of Veldkamp. Ewer much further ahead than the timing boards would say. Jennings and Craters. Jennings is desperately trying to find a way past Craters. Out of Goddard's, not much working for Jennings. Craters will hold on to the position between Mansueto and Bird, though. Bird making a massive comeback. Between DeHaro and Labe, I was going to say Bird making a massive comeback after that contact with Brown. This is the battle for P3 between DeHaro and Labe. The clouds have come back. The track is damp, and the track is not going to improve any past this current condition. Labe wanted to send the move up the inside at the chicane. He will do so, and will take the position away from the 43 of DeHaro. Labe into P3, back into the lead in the Holy Grail. But a bit deep into Melbourne, does that give DeHaro the opportunity to fight that back? I don't think it will. There is still the wrench in the works, which is the rain, which is going to be coming fairly soon. I believe that rain will start somewhere around the 10 minutes to go mark. And it will make things a bit interesting. Battle here between Bird and Mansueto for P6. I think Bird will hold on to this one for the time being. Battle between Ewer and Merkel. Ewer will try to hold off Merkel. I believe Merkel is going to be carrying a bit more speed, but has just not had the best race so far today. Jennings loses it all on his own, just ahead of these two. Ewer Brewer and Merkel will be promoted to position. Veldkamp as well. Jennings will fall back all the way to P12. I think that was just a snap oversteer moment. Jennings driving the car a bit too hard. Tried to save it, ended up losing it. It's a textbook snap oversteer. That was all it took to send Merkel off into the English countryside. Bird and Mansueto. This fight still going. Bird has now got P5. Mansueto will try and contend, and again that rain is just on the horizon. 59 of Jennings coming into the pit lane. Is he going on to a different tire? Possibly was on the slick tire, and that is not going to work here in the wet conditions. Bird ahead of Mansueto. And as of right now, the gap between the two just holding station. Dropped very slightly. As we are officially halfway through this race too. And again, rain is looming. It will continue, and rain has just begun. And likely to continue to just about the end of the race. We did see, I believe it was Jennings come into the pit lane. We saw one driver come into the pit lane. Don't know exactly what they did in terms of strategy. Bahena coming into the pit lane. Elizondo leading. Don't know if Elizondo has won a race this season. Has been in contention. It just had not worked out for him yet. Very possible that today is the one. As long as he's got everything on the car set to go, we will go back to fully wet conditions as this session is going to rain out to the checkered flag. And how exactly is that going to affect the car that both Elizondo and Wagner have come out with? I highly doubt that they're on separate tires, but it is possible. And now the track back to fully wet. We have a large group of cars here. DeHaro with, actually that is the Jag of Jennings behind. Jennings, I believe, did come into the pit lane. And we will definitely see who is out there on slicks and who isn't. For the most part, the wet tire drivers shouldn't have any issues. They should actually be praising the fact that it's raining because their wet tires were probably getting a bit warm with those damp conditions. And Mansueto carrying a bit more speed than Bird. Well, I thought Bird likely had this position done and dusted. It is now anything but. Mansueto just about a quarter of a second away and is looking to fight this position back. Bird gets a bit of a poor line through Coppice. And I think that may open the door, or at least let Mansueto peek inside for the overtake here for P5. The 119 of Labe gone around on his own at Goddard. That is not going to help him try to catch the 99 of Wagner. And another mistake like that could see him giving the third place position and the first place in the Holy Grail class back to Daharo, who is not far behind, just barely saw him squeak into the background. And as I like to refer to it, it may seem that Daharo is 7 or 8 seconds away, but in racing perspective, that is only one mistake away. One spin, you're going to lose well over 7 seconds. If you get the car pushed around backwards, and if you have to refire the car, well, you could be sitting there for 10 seconds, possibly even 15 seconds trying to get it refired, and then not spin the car around when you're on the wet grass. Battle between these two in the V8 Jags, as I think we may have just had a blip there between the two. I think possibly some lag there, as I think the server has possibly just died. We may be freezing conditions there, so I'm going to throw up the red flag for just a moment. Very possible that we had some more G portal issues, so stand by. Evidence, or we restart and run a short race session. We'll just have to wait and see what the official word is. P3 overall. And that would give Lab A the lead in race 1, or the win in race 2. So, unfortunate there, but that is going to be racing tonight. Sadly, hopefully issues do not persist. 24 hours this weekend, but we have precautions just in case that is what happens. So, again, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you on Saturday night. Stick around, we are going to find someone to raid. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope to see you this weekend and next week for the upcoming streams. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.